As Bitcoin just dived, the price is still under massive pressure. Fear and greed index is now dropping below 10. Guys, check this out. We're now seeing price targets from Coinbase of $60,000. On the other hand, we've got Bitwise talking about the bottom. Which one of them is right? Have we already hit the bottom, or are we going to crash even harder? We're also looking at some exciting data from the ETFs, which should give us a few clues here. But we're also seeing massive purchases from El Salvador. El Salvador is buying the dip here. Before we dive into whether we really need to go into bear mode now or if we can stay in the bull camp, go ahead and hit the like button below for higher Bitcoin prices for new all-time highs. As a thank you, I'll show you the eagle here. Just missed it by a hair. Hey, it just flew by right now. Too late? Yeah, what a shame. Well, then you'll just get to see the ocean instead. Now, Michael Saylor is also saying, believe. You have to believe in yourselves now. You can't just go along with all the panic. You have to see through it, of course. I also found it funny. Earlier, I wanted to transcribe a YouTube video, basically just pull out the transcript, the text from it. Then the whole thing didn't work, so I went to other sites, but it didn't work there either. Then I thought, hey, what's going on? Is it my Wi-Fi? No, that wasn't it either. Then I realized it was a Cloudflare service, an online service, offline. Bitcoin was open the whole time. Bitcoin works 24/7. While online services are offline from time to time, that's something you always have to keep in mind. But here we also have the fear and greed index dropping below 10, now down to 9, the lowest level since April 11th. And I have to be honest, that's not the Bitcoin fear and greed index, but the general financial fear and greed index. Since April, ever since we were in such a massive panic mode, the S&P 500 has actually risen by 37%. Now it's dropping by 4%, and even the traditional markets are in a state of massive fear. With Bitcoin, of course, this fear is even more intense, because Bitcoin is always a bit more volatile than the global financial markets, and it always swings much more into euphoria during euphoric times and much more into fear during fearful times. Adam Kobases also writes here that the market sentiment is as if the market seven are about to go bankrupt. Apple, Tesla, Google, and so on, as if they're really about to go bankrupt. But we also always have to remind ourselves, especially all the people who are bearish right now. Since 2017, Bitcoin has experienced the following: 10 or more drops of 25% or more, 6 drops of minus 50% or more, and 3 drops of minus 75% or more. Yesterday, I heard a really interesting take from British Hodl about why people are totally freaking out right now. Because percentage-wise, the pullbacks in Bitcoin's history really aren't that extreme, I'd say. But because we're dealing with these high numbers now, because we're not dropping from 10,000 to 5,000 anymore, and that sounds so easy, right? Like, oh, we dropped from 10,000 to 5,000, but that's actually 50%. In absolute numbers, though, that sounds way less dramatic than saying, okay, we dropped from 125,000 to 90,000. That's 30,000 US dollars, whereas before we only dropped 5,000 US dollars. But percentage-wise, it was way higher than what's happening now. And that's why people are getting on each other's nerves here. I mean, Bitcoin has also recovered a bit now. Now, we've even briefly hit the 93,000 US dollar mark again. We really have these two price levels now that we need to keep an eye on. But before we do that, let's take a quick look here. Eric Balchunas, ETF expert here, says that Bitcoin ETFs are seeing outflows of 250 million US dollars. Of that, 3 billion US dollars were in the last month, about 2.5% of total assets, while 97.5% are still being held. We still have inflows of 23 billion over the whole year, an impressive result. It's easy to forget how much capital was gained 18 months before the sell-off. So overall, not that bad considering the panic that's currently in the market. That means you always have to look at everything together, always zoom out a bit too. And yeah, but first, let's take a look at the bull case first, before we get to the bear case later. The bull case now is actually that the bottom is already in, that we've already seen the massive drop here. And often, this kind of massive panic is a sign that the bottom is simply in. There's also an interesting statement from Bitwise, who now simply assume that the bottom is already in. We'll also take a look in a moment at whether things could go even lower.
Do exactly agree with Tom. I think we're nearing a bottom. I look at this as a great buying opportunity for long-term investors. You know, Bitcoin was the first thing to turn over before this broader market pullback. It was sort of the canary in the coal mine, signaling that there was some risk in all sorts of risk on assets. I think it'll be the first thing to bottom, and I agree with Tom. We're getting very close to that point. So I think it's an exciting opportunity, again, for people who are looking out a year or more into the future.
For those who are taking a long-term view now, looking out more than a year, This is a really, really big opportunity. The bottom is more or less in. He's also on the same wavelength as Tom Lee here. We heard it from Arthur Hayes. Michael Saylor also says the bottom is more or less in. So we have one camp that's really, really bullish right now. And I have to say, the case does make sense that this is just a little bear trap, that we make a slight correction and then have one last massive peak upwards, because we just haven't seen those classic peak moments yet, like in the past, where we had a parabolic phase, where there was euphoria, where retail investors were involved. That means all the other signs we've seen in previous bull markets haven't even shown up yet. And now let's take a quick look at what El Salvador has done before we get to the bear case. El Salvador actually bought another 1,000 Bitcoin. That means everyone here is panicking. El Salvador is buying another 1,000 Bitcoin here. Some people have criticized that, saying Michael Saylor bought Bitcoin at too high a price. And now he has such a bad entry price. He's still at an average price of, I think, $74,000 or so. So still well below the current Bitcoin price. And he has the problem that he has to raise capital, especially when the market is going up, because then it's easier for him to raise money. Bukele somehow managed it differently. No idea where they got the cash from revenues or whatever. In any case, they're buying Bitcoin again now. That's pretty remarkable, of course. El Salvador now has 8,000 Bitcoin. Germany is selling its Bitcoin. It's kind of strange that third world countries now have more Bitcoin holdings than some so-called first world countries, which used to be the economic superpowers of the world. I can tell you from my own experience, there's really a lot happening here in El Salvador. There have been several events here over the past few days. If you walk around Bitcoin Beach right now, there are a lot of international Bitcoiners here as well. More and more places are accepting it, and Bitcoin holdings are also going up. There's still rumors about whether the Bitcoin was really bought or if it's just transfers. So if it's really just transfers, you have to ask yourself, what the heck? Then El Salvador actually has way, way more Bitcoin. That means the real story shouldn't be that they're just moving Bitcoin around, but rather the real story should be this. They actually have way more Bitcoin than they're letting on here. And it doesn't matter whether they're moving them around or buying more here, their Bitcoin holdings just keep going up. I mean, if they're just shifting things around, then it would actually make more sense not to sell 1,000 Bitcoins all at once. But rather, from a game theory perspective, it would make more sense to just keep some Bitcoin on the side so you can keep this whole shit show going for years. So the move from my one night clearly suggests that they're more likely buying Bitcoin here rather than just moving it around, because otherwise they just leave a few Bitcoins on the side just like that. Unless, of course, they've actually bought so much Bitcoin that they still have thousands more sitting on the side. But you also have to be realistic. This is a third world country. It used to be the most dangerous country in the world, the murder capital of the world. So even with the best intentions, I really can't imagine that back then they bought something like 100,000 Bitcoins and stocked up like that. And now, people always say the same thing, that it's all just a big shit show here, blah, 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 that none of this is actually real. Well, let me tell you one thing. Just come here and see for yourself. There are no shitcoins here. It's all about Bitcoin only. There's a really, really strong bottom-up adoption here. Of course, you see more of it at the hotspots than, let's say, if you go further inland. The farther you get from the coast, the less adoption you see. But even there, you still find some circular economies. Berlin, and now there are 5 or 6 more circular economies here, and so on. So I'm not entirely sure if these are actually shifts, but in fact, the 1,000 Bitcoins are really just another indication that people are actually buying here. I don't know for sure. Let me know in the comments below how you see it. And now, let's take a look at the bear case together.
Wir haben hier den Head of Institutional Strategy von Coinbase.
The sentiment is brutal right now, and you have to be very, very honest about that. Let's see, 125, could it go down to 60,000?
So mathematically, it is becoming less volatile. Just as a strict standard deviation calculation, it is becoming less volatile. You'd expect that as you have a wider and deeper market. You have more different types of investors. Obviously, the ETFs have brought in a flood of retail. You have more institutions. Harvard Endowment announced they hold more Bitcoin than gold the other day. So mathematically, that's what you would expect. It doesn't feel that way, to be very honest, right? The sentiment is brutal right now, and you have to be very, very honest about that. Just like I'm sure, you're holding gold, you feel smart. You didn't feel so smart in 2008 when gold lost a third of its value. For years, you just felt, yeah, I feel smart. Yeah. So as we've said many times on this show, trying to market time any volatile asset can get you in a lot of trouble. If you systematically invested in Bitcoin over a 5-year period, you're up an extraordinary amount. even year to date, while not great, both Bitcoin and Ethereum, while slightly negative, are, but Ethereum's a little bit up. If you stake your assets, you can earn a higher.
The question, are we going to drop back down to 60,000 here? And he just says, you have to be honest. The sentiment is really brutal right now. The mood is really just absolutely terrible. There's just no sugarcoating it. And he just says, honestly, it doesn't really make sense because we have the institutional flows. We have the big capital that's here now. We have all the announcements. We have major banks. Countries are buying Bitcoin. Banks are buying Bitcoin. Yeah, treasury companies are buying a bit less Bitcoin now, but still, there are, I'd say, a lot of really crazy things happening in the background. But you still have to be honest, the sentiment here is just brutal. But he also says, if you zoom out here, it was actually pretty good. Even if you go back 5 years, it was good. And of course, in the long term, this could be another opportunity. And the thing is, what you really have to ask yourselves is, what is different about Bitcoin now compared to, say, 3 months ago? Is there anything about Bitcoin that's different now compared to 3 months ago? If you come to the conclusion that no, nothing has really changed, then you should actually be happy about these ridiculously low prices. Then you should be saying, awesome. The price is lower, but nothing has fundamentally changed. And that's exactly what I often want to get across to you. Don't let the price unsettle you. Really take a look. Has anything actually changed? If you were bullish 3 months ago, there's no reason not to be bullish now. So if you want to buy Bitcoin, if you want to take advantage of this opportunity to buy more, then check out Bit21 Bitcoin. I'll put a link for you below so you can easily buy Bitcoin. The whole process really works smoothly. Just download the app and then you can send money over, create an account, buy Bitcoin. Of course, this is the financial advice. Do whatever you want. For all I care, save your money in stones or seashells. Do it however you like. And yeah, code Bitcoin Hotel. We're still saving up to 20% on the fee when buying Bitcoin. And I'll see you soon.